So Ger Loughnane, thanks for welcoming us to Feakle. It's great to be down here with you. We're going to talk about your life in hurling a little bit. Feakle had a county winning team, I think in the 1940s, good bit before you were born. But your first memories of hurling, was that team kind of hanging over the town a little bit, or those men were big characters, I'd imagine?
My first big memory of hurling, and when I got hooked in hurling, I was actually a late starter, thinking of it now, was that there was a Feakle team in the early 60s who were in great contention for the championship, but they won the Clare Cup, and that was the first game I was ever at. You know, we were farmers, and I used to go to the creamery with my father and the horse and car, and there was a local shopkeeper here, Con Smith, and he knew I was interested in sport, and he asked me, would I like to go to the game? And I went to the game in a green van with him. I'll never forget, the back of a green van. And we were in Ennis, and we were on the sideline in Ennis. And I can still, the images of that game are still vivid in my mind. You know, Lee Maloney here, who was a brilliant hurler with great hands, throwing his hurley up into the air and catching it coming down after scoring a goal. You don't see that kind of celebration nowadays. And Feakle won 3-9 to 2-10 against Tubber. And I thought it was the greatest thing that ever happened. And the following week, in the local paper there, in the Clare Champion, then there was a photograph of the team. Actually, Seamus has it there on the corner of the pub. And that was the first photograph I ever put up on the wall. And that is the one game and the team that hooked me on hurling. I was 10, 11 at the time. And coincidentally, the school in Feakle was in the village here when I started off first, but when I was in 5th class, a new school opened down in the field, right beside part of the hurling field in Feakle. So, you know, we had the bug. So we were all out morning, break time, lunchtime, even after school, we'd stay back playing games. One sliotar, of course, and everything was there was no big skill training. It was all a match, and flaking into each other and going back into school, pouring sweat into class afterwards. And the principal we had, Sean Harrington, he was the key man in the 30s and 40s, you know, so he was a hero to us as well. And, you know, being in the school with him and he watching us outside hurling, he would never say very much, you know, he'd pass the odd comment, that's all. But that all lent itself to me and so many others with me getting the bug for hurling. And once we had it, there was no letting go.
No letting go. And when you're playing in the school and leathering into fellas and, as you said, just always playing matches, you're playing for Feakle. That's the dream at that stage. There's not really a Clare thing. It's almost a more local thing at that point in your life, is it?
Coming out of Cusack Park that evening after winning the Clare Cup against Tubber, my only ambition was to wear the Feakle jersey. That was my ambition, whatever level, you know. And the underage structure, of course, at that time wasn't half as well organised as it is now. So under 14 was really the first time we played. And I can remember the first game I played for Feakle at under 14, and maybe I was 12, you know, 13, and we played against Ennis, you know, Ennis Rovers as they were known at the time, and they were massive men. They'd be all 14 years of age, and they beat us 14-6 to 2-2. You know, so there was a big danger that the bug was going to get squashed very early on, but it didn't. That was the whole thing. It didn't. You know, we were still the thrill of getting that jersey, the Feakle jersey. I can still feel that thrill, and every time I got it afterwards, I felt the thrill of putting on the Feakle jersey. You know, I suppose I was so anxious to get it the first time that when I got it, I never lost the thrill of the feel of putting on that jersey. And you know, for so many years afterwards, I played with Feakle, and even though we weren't strong, and we were intermediate for a while, came back up senior, and struggled at senior for so many years. Still, the idea of playing with Feakle and of wearing that jersey, the thrill of that never left me.
But at the end of your Clare career, you decided to give it one more go with Feakle, come back for one more year, and won the county championship for the first time in 44 years.
I met Father Harry one evening. Father Harry was actually involved with Feakle at that time, and I met him one evening inside in the West County, and I said I'll go back for 1 year, you know, to see where they win, because he said to me they're struggling, they're not, you know, to win the championship. So I said I'd come back, and I had the 2 greatest years of my life. I was finished with Clare, and I had the 2 best years of my career, you know, of my hurling career. We won the Clare Cup twice, we got the 2 county finals, and in the very last game, we won the championship. And I remember grabbing Seamus McGrath, who was playing beside me after winning, and dancing around the field. And I didn't even dance in Croke Park after we winning in '95. But it meant so much, that, growing up here, hearing the stories of all the ones who had won before us, and I then being on the county team and not having won a championship with Feakle, I felt it was nearly an obligation on me to try and help Feakle to win a senior championship. And to do that at the very end of my career, like, you couldn't have a better ending. It was just absolutely, everything I could have dreamt of was in Cusack Park that evening when we beat Rouen, to have won a championship at long last. I felt then I had paid my dues to Feakle, that having been a part of that team. But it was just a brilliant day and a brilliant thing to happen at the end of the career to win with Feakle. People don't understand the history of Clare like this. Our history is so poor in terms of titles. And sometimes when you look back over it, you'd wonder, how did the game survive? When it came to big games, Clare always underperformed. Now, many times they weren't good enough, but even when they weren't good enough, they underperformed. The worst thing was when they were good enough, they still underperformed. And it taught me the lesson that if we were to win, we had to have a completely new approach, especially psychologically. Our psychological approach, our mental approach had to be totally different to what it was in my days. Now, I don't want to undermine anyway the quality of the players I played with and how seriously they took it, how dedicated they were. But when it came to the really big games, we have to say we collapsed.
Yeah. But so you think that the wheels were turning as early as that for you in what ultimately became the breakthrough in '95?
I always found with myself, Michael, when we were in those Munster finals, I loved the big occasions. And my biggest regret from hurling was that I didn't get a chance to go to Croke Park and test ourselves in Croke Park, see how we would have performed there. So that time there was no backdoor, there was no, you had to win Munster Championship to get to Croke Park. So having learned the lesson from that, my one thing that went through my mind was, if I ever get a chance of winning Charles Clare, I'm going to do things totally differently. And there'll be no softly approach. It would be an absolutely telling the players honestly what had happened in the past, and it will happen to you again if we don't do things differently. That was that summarizes my approach when I did become manager at Clare. If we do things the same as we did in the past, it doesn't matter how good you are, we'll have the same results. We will collapse, but we made sure we wouldn't.
I was reading in Dennis Walsh's brilliant book, the Hurling, the Revolution Years. I was just flicking through it there again, and I saw an amazing stat that he was saying that up until '95, you had been involved as either a player or mentor, and not just at senior level, in 13 Munster finals, and Clare had lost all of them. Would you say that by the time you're taken over from Clare, even as a selector under Len Gaynor in kind of 93, 94, that this had become a bit of an obsession, the Munster final in itself, that this was something that you were going to make sure that Clare got over that line, hell or high water?
It had become a total obsession because, from my time in Flannans to my time playing with Clare, underage and senior, we had been in so many finals and had lost all those finals. So what do you do then? Do you just say, oh, you're never going to win? You're never going to get the feeling of what it would be like to win? Or are you going to work so hard? Or does it drive you all the more? When Clare played Tipperary in 1993 below in Limerick, I was up in the stand. And the reaction I had when Clare was trounced by Tipperary wasn't one of disappointment. It was one of absolute fury. And I just got up in my seat and I said, no matter what it takes, I'm going to do something about this. Why it struck me like that, I don't know, but I can still see myself getting up off that seat and coming out the road. And I said, I'm going to do something about it. And like the county board didn't want me. I suppose they regarded me as too difficult to deal with for some reason, I don't know. But anyway, there was a great chairman here at that time, Brendan Vaughan. He was the chairman of the board, and he knew me from Shannon. He was the principal of a school in Shannon, and he knew the drive I had and the desire I had for Clare to win. And he backed me, and he used the kind of a circuitous route to get me in as manager when Lynn left. And once I was in, then I wasn't going to mess it up.
It's funny you say that because the route to you being Clare manager, according to the Walsh book and a few other people that I've said, it was that you went on Clare FM and announced that you were the Clare manager.
That's an absolute fact, yeah. Just before the county board approved it, because there was I went back under the agreement that I would go in with Len as selector, provided that when he left, I would be made the manager. So Len had said that he was leaving, and I therefore pronounced myself as the new manager on Clare FM. That was before the county board meeting took place. But of course, when the county board meeting didn't take place, there was nearly a plea to Len to stay on, because if he doesn't stay on, Loughnane will be the manager and we'll be faced with total ruin, you know. But it went through. Len had told me he was getting out, and who was a brilliant man now, did great work for Clare. But once he got in, then I set about the plan that I had of getting the right people, first of all, with me, and then really having a go for it.
When it did happen that day against Limerick, I remember going out onto the pitch. There was so many people, so many different generations there, old men crying. I don't think you can underestimate how much that meant to the county after such a long wait, 63 years, and so many final defeats like we've already talked about. I feel that legacy even continues on today. I feel like it's a different county with a different belief in itself because of that. Do you ever look back on that and with any kind of a sentimentality about getting over that line and basically changing the way an entire county thinks about itself?
Well, the reaction to that victory in '95 in the Munster final, as you say, it took me totally by surprise. Even coming back that night, up all the way from Cratloe, the whole road lined with people, on through Cratloe, the market, Clare Castle, and into Ennis and the crowd in Ennis. You don't expect that after the Munster final. And then we did a tour of Clare the following week. You know, we're all over East Clare and going into places with bonfires everywhere. We were here in Feakle, the place was strong, the hall was strong above. All the old hurlers who had played for Feakle were up there, meeting them all. And it gave you a new sense, and you looked at the heritage of hurling in Clare in a totally different way, because you suspected all along the desire that was there for Clare to win. But here was the expression of that desire, you know. Here it was in all the villages of, you know, especially in East Clare and North Clare, you know, around Rouen, all those areas along there. And like it took us all by surprise. It took the players by surprise. And I think it inspired them not to leave it at that, but to go on and try and win the All-Ireland. And even if you did that, to try and have an era that all of those people that came out after that, and that they would have an era in which they could follow a team that would be winning, something they never had during their own life themselves. And like it's like a dream that it did turn out that way. But the reaction to that victory, I think, it inspired us all. It took us by surprise, number one, but it inspired us all to go on and do more. Because the biggest fault with teams that don't win regularly is when they do win, they are too easily satisfied. And that's the thing that undoes a lot of them, you know.
An amazing kind of 5-6 year period. I don't think that any of us have ever experienced, will ever experience. And I think that goes around the country as well. A lot of other teams involved in the way hurling was, but for Clare especially, just an incredible, we know about all the matches, the famous games, Limerick 95, Limerick 96, the All-Ireland finals, the Offaly trilogy, the Kilkenny semi-finals that people kind of forget about a little bit as well. What would you say was your best day, the day you think about most?
Oh, there's one day that stands out above all other, and that was the Munster final in '97 below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Never had an experience like that before, even after winning the All-Ireland, or afterwards, like we had that day, because I can remember everything from going down on the bus that morning, staying below in the hotel, going for a few pucks beforehand, just imploring on the lads to do something special today, because this was Tipperary. You'll be remembered for all time if you beat Tipperary, because Tip were our long-time torturers, the team that was most shattered our dreams down through the decades. So it was the day, it was going to be liberation day for Clare if they could win on that day. And when we got to Páirc Uí Chaoimh, the atmosphere that was in the pitch, we got out in the pitch, the noise level, Tipperary supporters were just brilliant. Like they had the rivalry at Clare at that time was an all-time high, and the electric atmosphere there was before the game, even during the national anthem, and incidents that happened even before the game started with the national anthem, and when the game started, the pace at which it was played at, and right through then to Leahy's miss in the last minute, or Davy's save or Leahy's miss, call it what you like, but it was such a dramatic game. But it was the feeling afterwards. Usually when a game is over, you have all people running into the field and jumping up, and you had Anthony Daly's, we're no longer the whipping boys of Munster. But what I really remember was inside in the dressing room afterwards, and we just sitting down, and the Sparrow was beside me, and we said, Jesus, we did it. We did it. We'd beat Tip in the Munster final. Couldn't believe it. We'd beaten Tip in the Munster final. We came in there with the McCarthy Cup, and there was all tear away, but here was an inner satisfaction that you don't get from the excitement you usually get of just winning. There was an inner satisfaction, a fulfillment of the dream, if you like, that one day we'd be recognised as a truly great team in Munster. And that was the day that everybody recognised that team as a really great team. And I always claimed that they'd never have been regarded as being great unless they had beaten Tip on that day. That was the day, for me anyway, but for an awful lot of other people in Clare as well. When we got together in that bus, no matter where we were going, especially in big days, there was a kind of an energy between us all, and a connection between everybody there, that we always felt that nothing was impossible to us. If you were to say what was the second best, I'd say, beating Waterford the second day. I never saw a team so united in the dressing room as before going out on that day against Waterford. There was just that day we were not going to be beaten. It didn't matter. The old story of come back with your shield or on it. That was one of those days. And to play like we did, I know you had the row to start, but to play like we did and win like we did that way, that was a day of massive satisfaction as well. And even the games against Offaly, afterwards, I know you had the thing with the second day, like the hurling we played in the first half, the second day in Croke Park was just magical stuff.
The third act of Ger Loughnane is the television pundit, and I think being kind of like the go-to voice on hurling. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the kind of some of the more controversial aspects of what you say and stuff like that, but I think what comes across for me, and I'll always remember doing when you did the Sunday game the night of the 2013 replay, when talking about Podge Collins' point that day, and I know you knew Podge growing up and stuff like that, but just the sheer joy in the skill of the hurling that was produced that day and that point in particular. I always feel that like you do get, what comes across more than anything is your love of the game, and that you've never lost that love of the game, and you still, the whole country gets to see it every Sunday.
Well, that's the thing about the game. Like, the game is always a fascination for me, and it has the biggest fascination now as it had when I started out. And what I love to see is the changes in the game, especially if the changes are for the good. And for the good to me is if the appeal to the general public of the game is greater now than it ever was. And it is greater when you watch some teams, even when you watch the present Cork team, and the quality of their skill and movement is just fantastic to watch. It's magical. You take a fella like Patrick Horgan and you see him scoring a point, left or right, with the minimum of foot. You hardly see his wrists moving. That is a massive fascination for me. And then to watch the trends that are taking place, to see the Cork 121 team just a week ago, to see the quality of their play, the movement, the skinning pace they have. And you see then, you're constantly watching, what's the next innovation? The next innovation is going to come from Cork, because it's going to be based on withdrawing forwards and moving forwards at lightning pace, which is really a reinvention of Kilkenny in 2006. So to watch all the innovations, more innovation has taken place since 2000, I'd say, than took place in the whole history of hurling before that. And to be on television while that's taking place, it's brilliant, and you try to explain it to people. Now, I know people think at times I go too far with it, but, in getting across a message, the message should be, or the message to me is, when it's played well, it's very hard to surpass the thrill that you get from watching hurling when it's played at its glorious best. Now, I'm not saying it's better than any other game, definitely not, but it's the game we love. And to see the game we love giving such satisfaction to so many people is brilliant. And you just try to bring across that to those who are watching or listening or whatever.
So as we finish up here, from that first day in the going to the Clare Cup final all the way to now, you've been involved in hurling. It's been as a player, as a manager, as a TV and newspaper pundit. The relationships over the years that you must, that's what we kind of always come back to, is I remember there's a quote one of the lads uses that's from you, that never be afraid to make enemies in hurling, because in the end they're not your real enemies. And he loves that, he says it all the time, you know. But is that how you would look at things, that fall out with people, don't fall out with people, but ultimately we're all part of the one hurling community here, and this is our game and our...
Well, I am living testament to that, you know, because nobody, you know, when I was a manager of Clare, you know, all the criticism from spectators and all that from other counties, and I meet them now and we all look back at it and say, God, all the time's brilliant, you know. I'll just give you one example of it. Liam Cahill played for Tipperary, a corner forward, and one day I went into him inside Ninnis in a fierce fractious game, and I told him, you know, Frank Lohan was after getting sent off, and I said, the next day we'll get you so-and-so. I was playing golf with him yesterday, and we had the greatest crack and talk about all the times we had. And all we have is regret that there isn't that kind of rivalry still there, because people don't understand that rivalry is not enmity. You know, it's only a passing phase. Rivalry, it's just a, but when it's at its peak, it's just brilliant. And to play in a game, or to be involved in a game, either a manager or as a player, where the rivalry is cutthroat. Afterwards, you look back on that as being the really good old days. And the people you meet then, who were your rivals then, you have something in common that's deeper than a lot of the friendships you have, you know, because you have shared something that so few others have shared. So I am just blessed, you know, that I had such a career as a player, as a manager, and as a pundit. I'm just blessed. All the people I've met, connections I've met all over the country. And anytime you meet those people, there's an instant connection. That's the great thing about it. There's an instant connection. So, but on top of that is all, you know, running through all that is the glory of hurling when it's played at its best. And we forget the bad days we had, and we forget the bad hurling. We always think of the brilliant games down through the years and look forward. That's the most important. Look forward to the game. Now, who would have thought when I started as a pundit that the Kilkenny team of Henry Shefflin and J.J. Delaney and Tommy Welsh and Brian Cody, did that come along? Look at the satisfaction that we all got from watching those. Now we look forward to the next bigger innovation in hurling. Probably will come from Cork. Where will it come from? You're always speculating, you're always looking forward. That's why I have no photographs on my wall at home, because I don't often look back except on occasions like this. It's always looking forward and looking forward to more hurling. It's like what Ring said. You know, whenever people said he was a great hurler. Oh, he says, yeah, there was great hurlers in my time, but there's better still to come. There's better hurlers and better hurling still to come, and that's how I look at it.
Ger Loughnane, thank you for having us and for bringing us through your hurling life.
Pleasure, Mike.